We're finally in the Arabasta saga. This is actually the arc I quite enjoyed as a kid when I watched that terrible version from the 2+2 kids. Today we're going to be covering Reverse Mountain. We start off this arc with, well, things. Because things are bad. The light from the lighthouse that the Going Merry has been following thus far has gone out. And while Luffy may find this an issue, Nami is calm. This is because, as a navigator, it's her duty to, well, navigate them when things like this happen. Hence why having such a good navigator is key. All the while, Luffy is actually calling her amazing while doing some Circus Dole tricks off the bow of the ship in the middle of a storm. And even Nami is like, dude, Luffy, stop, dude, you're gonna fucking die, man. To which he's like, no, this is my spot, Nami, stop trying to take it. I mean, Luffy is just a straight up psycho. He's really giving Gon a run for his money at this point. Though, Nami then reveals that the entrance to the Grand Line is just as the rumors have stated it to be. A mountain. And not just any mountain though. The mountain the lighthouse was pointing to was Reverse Mountain, right smack dab in the middle of the Red Line. Though they're not just gonna somehow crash into the mountain, they're going to traverse it. And to make matters worse, there is no other way. Though, Nami is interrupted before her explanation when Usopp announces that there is a storm. Nami suddenly realizes, oh no, they have entered the calm belt. So she immediately orders everyone to take the oars and row as fast as they can, as they have to go back into the storm at all costs. This is because the Grand Line is surrounded by two belts. These are aptly named the Calm Belts. These are particularly dangerous because, as the name suggests, they are calm, but only in the sense that there is no wind to speak of. Due to this, as the crew quickly finds out, it's inhabited by Sea Kings. Essentially, what Sea Kings are is gigantic fish of all exotic types that are on top of their respective food chains. They also look like something Guts would fight in a dimly lit cave, but I'm not judging. Okay, I'm judging just a little bit. Also turns out they're on top of one, and so it sneezes and launches the Going Merry. Though, thankfully, they get back to the storm, saving themselves from the Calm Belt. All of this being an answer to Zoro's question of having to take the entrance to the Grand Line. Because if you don't, you gotta deal with Griffith's army of fishies. This gives Nami an epiphany though, they really are going to climb up the mountain with the Going Merry. Turns out that because there are 4 strong currents headed towards the mountain, they literally drive the current up the mountain to the top of the Grand Line. Even better, because they're in one of those currents, all they really have to do is make sure their steering is as good as can possibly be. Even then though, the Grand Line is dangerous, and at the entrance alone, many ships fail to make it to the end, often crashing and being drug under. But they eventually make it to the mythical Red Line, which is a massive mountain of rock that reaches up to the clouds. And if you don't believe me, they make sure to show how small the Going Merry is in comparison to the Red Line. That also in of itself puts into perspective how big the Sea Kings are as well. How big? Well, just about as big as the Red Line. Then they get to the entrance, and sure enough, there is a waterway shooting up the mountain. Going in, they immediately break their rudder, so Luffy has to think quickly and uses Gomu Gomu Balloon to get crushed in between the arch and the ship to course correct the Going Merry. And they did it. They got to the top of Reverse Mountain. Now, like a Jane's Addiction song, it's all about coming down the mountain. Heading down the mountain, they hear something, but not knowing what it is, they decide it's probably just the wind. Though, it's not. It's a gigantic mountain-like whale with a scarred up, nose? What do we exactly call that on a whale? Either way, it's a gigantic black sperm whale, and it's directly in their way. So, having no other options, they try to turn, but the giant whale that makes even the Red Line and the Sea Kings we saw look tiny cannot be avoided. And thus, Luffy fires a cannon, which stops the Going Merry. In the process, breaking Luffy's special seat and giving Nami an existential crisis. Though Luffy, mauling and seething, punches the whale in the eye, prompting the Straw Hats to die? Also to get swallowed up, ship and all, by the whale. Well, except for Luffy, that is. So he starts punching the whale, demanding he give back his friends. You're hurting him! Something like that. And then he spots a hatch. Huh? A hatch? Inside the belly of the beast, however, it's a little bit of a different story. Of all things, the sky is white, and in it, an island that's inhabited as a squid attacks the Going Merry but is harpooned by someone on that island. Though, Luffy has found something equally as interesting. Going down the hatch, he finds a freaking hallway of all things. There, the Straw Hats meet Crocus, the lighthouse keeper of Twin Capes. Turns out that Crocus has painted the stomach of this whale to that of a sky. As well, there is an exit from his stomach that they can just simply go through. While he's explaining, the whale actually starts to bash its head against the red line. Turns out, the whale is suffering. Though, in an even more surprising twist, we're introduced to two spies? What? What the hell is going on with this arc? Anyways, we are introduced to two spies that you'd see off a Mission Impossible episode called Mysterious Man Mr. 9 and Mysterious Woman Miss Wednesday. Their mission is to take out Crocus because, according to Miss Wednesday, this whale is their town's sweet honey, see? Translation, they're gonna eat the whale. Though, they are quickly interrupted by Luffy, who runs into them, sending them flying, landing around the Going Merry. As this is happening, of course, we learn that Crocus swam all the way to a special room that has sedatives to calm the gigantic whale, who is named Laboon. Turns out that Crocus will also take a bullet for Laboon, literally, as Mr. 9 and Miss Wednesday shoot Crocus, which Luffy then knocks him out just because he doesn't know what's gonna happen. Like, he doesn't know what's going on here, so, better safe than sorry, I suppose. Turns out, Laboon is an island whale, commonly found in West Blue, and is the largest species of whale in the world. As well, the people after him and Laboon are rogues. Their goal is to hunt down Laboon, as by doing so, the meat from which will feed their town for nearly 3 years. Crocus, though, won't allow that to happen. But there is also more to Laboon, as whale. The deets about Laboon's past are simple. There was a group of pirates which came down the mountain. Following their ship was a baby whale. This was Laboon. Fearing their continued journey into the Great Line, it was too dangerous. So they left Laboon behind. Interestingly enough, island whales, though, swim together in pods, and it turns out that, you guessed it, Laboon's pods were, these pirates. Crocus ended up actually becoming friends with these pirates, and eventually he was asked to watch over Laboon for the next 3 years, vowing to come back and get Laboon no matter what, no matter the cost. So, he waited patiently. 50 years to be exact. And this sad story is exactly why Laboon keeps smashing his head into the red line. He still, 50 years later, believes they will come back for him. So, Crocus simply treats the whale from the inside, since it's impossible to do so on the outside. So, finally being let free, Mr. 9 and Miss Wednesday are tossed overboard. And just like the tropes they are based off of, they beg to differ and want them to prepare themselves, bidding the hillbilly pirates adieu. Though, they won't be the last rogues to try and poach Laboon. Afterwards, we learned from Crocus that the pirates which promised to come back for Laboon have left the Grand Line altogether in the last 50 years. The reason being, most likely because of the chaotic nature of the Grand Line, where, quote, common sense fails to uphold, end quote. They then ask, why not tell Laboon? The sad reality is that Crocus has repeatedly, over and over, told Laboon, so much so that Laboon rebels against this by simply bashing his head over and over again against the red line. So, Luffy, noticing the wound on Laboon, takes one of their masts and uses Gomu Gomu flower arrangement to plug the hole. So, Laboon throws Fluffy onto the red line, and they call it a tie. Which leads to Luffy promising that he'll return to fight one day, giving Laboon hope that maybe someday, someone will come back for him. So, Luffy being Luffy paints a gigantic straw hat symbol on Laboon, you know, as a promise. And a symbol they'll fight again because of course. So, as they all have a gigantic feast together, they notice that their compass is going haywire. Though, the compass isn't broken. It's actually a geomagnetic anomaly unique to the Grand Line. This is because of many islands being rich with various minerals. So, to navigate the Grand Line, they'll need a specific item called the log pose. This allows them to navigate the Grand Line by recording the magnetic field itself. To which we learn quickly, Luffy has one as Mr. 9 and Miss Wednesday dropped theirs. Though, the log pose is quite interesting in of itself. To make it across the various islands, they have to record the magnetic field surrounding them. So, they need to record 2 islands before they can make it to the next one. Even more interesting is that they have one of 7 paths they can choose from. Though, every island will eventually always lead to one island. The final island before the Grand Line, Raftel. The only pirate of which to ever confirm its existence is the Pirate King himself. It is known simply as an Island of Legends. Because of this, many people believe this is to be the home of One Piece, though nobody has been able to confirm it yet. Gotta be honest here, I really enjoyed Reverse Mountain. If we are able to compare these 2 short 5-chapter arcs, I think this one isn't as good as Loguetown, personally speaking, but I also don't think it's by much. Maybe just a semi-notch below Loguetown. Once again, much like Loguetown, this arc really sets up the world building of One Piece through the mechanics of the world. What I mean by this is that it sets up the basic rules in the Grand Line, much like how the early arcs set up the rules of East Blue. I really love the detailed explanation for the Grand Line because it gives the viewer an extra layer of tension and depth, being able to know exactly how the Grand Line works and what our Straw Hats have to deal with. It's just something extra that fleshes out the world of One Piece that Oda didn't have to do, but he did. So he took the time to do it anyway. And that's wonderful. Speaking of, so are the characters in Reverse Mountain. While we only get a glimpse at what was offered, especially from Crocus and Laboon, I still found them highly entertaining and fascinating all the same, especially Laboon, who has basically an island in his stomach with a facility run by one person just to make sure he's alright, and the root of Laboon's problems being his broken heart over his friends. The pirates he considered his pod and family that left him abandoned at the entrance of the Grand Line for 50 years is nothing short of heartbreaking, but does a really good job at sympathizing us towards a gigantic island whale of all things. This leads us to Crocus, who is pretty basic, but he serves his purpose and role perfectly. I enjoyed him quite a bit in this. Simple as that. Just a good dude looking out for a good boy. So, where would I rank this arc? Well, I think that's pretty simple. I think Reverse Mountain is just right below Loguetown, but still in B tier. The reason for this is that, as I stated previously, it's a fun story. Introduces a lot of important mechanics for most likely the rest of the Arabasta saga, and sets up future stories with Laboon and Crocus, and as well the next arc, Whiskey Peak. It's just really good, and really solid storytelling and world building I've now come to expect from One Piece. And who can complain? Though, speaking of Whiskey Peak, Luffy and Sanji get into a spat. Something about simping over Nami, and they end up breaking the log pose, which Crocus gives them one anyways as a thank you for helping with Laboon. Enter, back into the story, Mission Impossibles, who realize they now have their precious log pose, which is when we are introduced to the mysterious sea otter, Mr. 13, and mysterious vulture, Miss Friday. No, this is not an antagonist from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. It's just a freaking sea otter riding a vulture. I mean, that's pretty much it. So, They like drop a bomb on Mr. 9 and Miss Wednesday or something like that. Suspicions of betrayal. Due to this, the two ask the Straw Hats to take him to Whiskey Peak, their hometown, and while Nami is skeptical, they promise to return the favor and they can't say anything because, you know, mystery is their organization's motto, so they agreed to bring them back to their hometown of Whiskey Peak. So, you know. About Miss Wednesday and Mr. 9, though, these two characters are really mysterious, and I get their reasonings for wanting to poach Laboon, as it would feed their village for years to come. But I also get the sense that these characters were just meant to bridge the gap between Reverse Mountain and Whiskey Peak, which is cool. I'm fine with that. It's not a bad thing, but pardon the pun, which no matter, it's intended anyways, they're mysterious, and that mystery is actually what will help carry us into Whiskey Peak, giving the Straw Hats a built-in motivation off the rip for the next arc. Though as well, what the hell was with Crocus mentioning a man named Roger? Now, while he may be mentioning Roger, the guy who clearly doesn't like working at McDonald's, I'm thinking he's mentioning the only Roger we know. Roger the alien from American Dad. I think he's mentioning Gold Roger, the one and only big booty daddy of One Piece, but why? Well, let's do a little cyber sleuthing, chooms. If Crocus has been waiting since he was, well, from the looks of it, around his 30s, with Laboon until, 50 years later, that puts him around the age of 70 or 80, something like that at the very least. If that is true, we do know Golden Richard died somewhere like 20 to 30 years ago. My theory? Interior Crocus alligator met Golden Richard and they did something together. Whatever it was, I do not know. That is unclear. Maybe it was ingredients for Laboon's sedatives having a factor, though if I'm a betting man, and I'm not, Rickenbacker met with Hocus Pocus, that's for sure. Anyways, if you enjoy my One Piece content, become a patron to get access to 3 videos in advance on Whiskey Peak, Little Garden, and Drum Island Part 1, as well as bonus tier lists for every arc only available through Patreon. We just hit 30 Patreons, so now we are on the march to 50 patrons, in which I will have a surprise for those who follow me there. Next week, Whiskey Peak. This and much more next time on the adventures of One Piece.